Hi, everyone. In this third and final PowerPoint about Bill Clinton's presidency, we're going to look at the impeachment of Bill Clinton. You've read about this in Eric Foner. I'm going to go into some more detail about certain aspects of this than Foner does, and you're going to be watching two video clips related to this for class content in our module this week, one of which is just a 30-second clip where Clinton makes the famous statement that he didn't have sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky, and that's something I'm going to talk about in this PowerPoint. And the other clip that you're watching, I actually am going to place a warning on because it contains a lot of graphic language and sexually explicit language. And the reason I want you to see it, I'm not attaching a discussion to that, but I want you to get an idea of what I'm talking about in this PowerPoint, because the fact that the impeachment inquiry focused so heavily on the details of the sexual activity that went on between Clinton and Monica Lewinsky ended up being something that many Americans found just as disturbing as Clinton's behavior. And that's the reason I want you to watch that. It's about a 4.5-minute excerpt from Clinton's testimony, the totality of which I think was a little over 2 hours. So let's go ahead and get started on this. The investigation that led to the impeachment of Bill Clinton started with investigations done by a special prosecutor named Kenneth Starr. Starr initially started investigating what became known as the Whitewater scandal. And in brief, Whitewater was the name of a development project on a lake in Arkansas. It was started by a developer who had been a supporter of Clinton's during the time he was governor. So this was somebody that Bill and Hillary Clinton knew, and they invested in this project. The project was never completed. This guy squandered all the money that people had invested. He ended up going bankrupt, ended up going to jail. The Clintons didn't do anything wrong, anything illegal. They lost money in this, but this investigation into the Whitewater deal, the scandal of it didn't have anything to do with the Clintons. The scandals centered around the actions of the developer. But Whitewater became the springboard for subsequent investigations of Clinton. So during the Whitewater investigation, as that proved to be a dead end, Starr shifted his focus to a woman from Arkansas named Paula Jones, who claimed that Clinton had sexually harassed her when he was governor. And her claim of harassment was that Clinton had exposed himself to her. I can't say for certain one way or another whether what Paula Jones claimed was true. There are much more serious allegations against Clinton involving inappropriate behavior. This one I've always been somewhat dubious about, because exposing yourself, it usually reflects it's behavior that reflects deeper psychological problems, and typically it's not one-time behavior. It's something that a person does repeatedly. There are no other instances, allegations, or accusations of Clinton doing this, so I've always been somewhat skeptical about it. Kenneth Starr shifted his focus to Paula Jones' claims, but before he was able to pursue that very far, she agreed to settle out of court, and that was the end of that matter. However, in the course of investigating Paula Jones' case, Starr learned of allegations that Clinton had a sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky, young woman who worked as an intern at the White House. And this became the focus of Starr's ongoing investigation. Linda Tripp, whom you see here in the slide, just died last month. And this almost sounds fictional, but As Starr's investigation proceeded, Monica Lewinsky was growing increasingly nervous and began talking with Linda Tripp. They had formerly worked together at the Pentagon, and it was through these conversations that Linda Tripp, who was a Republican who intensely disliked Clinton, it's through these conversations that she learned about Lewinsky having a relationship with Clinton. And Linda Tripp began to encourage Monica Lewinsky to provide more and more detail, and also started secretly recording these conversations, especially prompting Monica to talk explicitly about the sexual behavior that had gone on between her and Bill Clinton. Linda Tripp learned from these conversations that Monica Lewinsky had a dress with Clinton's semen stains on it that she had never taken to the cleaners. It was stored in a closet. And so when she felt like she had accumulated sufficient incriminating evidence, she contacted Starr's investigation. Now, as I mentioned when we talked about Jennifer Flowers recording Bill Clinton, when he was a candidate, this is illegal to secretly record somebody phone conversation without their knowledge. And so Linda Tripp is exposing herself to potential litigation, but Kenneth Starr granted her immunity from any prosecution from recording Monica Lewinsky in exchange for Linda Tripp turning over all these recordings. And so this is how Kenneth Starr gets his hands on all this information. So now this becomes the focus of Starr's investigation, and details of this begin to appear in the media. Kenneth Starr leaked significant damaging amounts of information. This is completely contrary to how a special investigation is supposed to be conducted, but he and his staff constantly leaked damaging information, and this became a huge media story that would become the focus of the American media for several months. Clinton, from the beginning, used this phrase. You're going to see this in the video clip from his testimony, too, that he did not have sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky. The reason he used this phrase, remember, Clinton was a lawyer. He had been a law school professor. Clinton was fully aware that many states in the United States in the 1990s still defined sexual relations as meaning sexual intercourse. And Clinton and Monica Lewinsky never had sexual intercourse. They engaged in a variety of types of sexual behavior, never had intercourse. So that's why Clinton continually used this phrase. As you can imagine, the ongoing revelations about Clinton's relationship created a tremendous strain in his marriage, for his family. You see the Clintons here with their daughter Chelsea, who was a young woman now. I have to emphasize the other point in this slide, as I do this in class, because this is a topic that if you bring up, you can still create pretty strong arguments between people depending on their political outlook to an extent, I guess. Nobody at the time approved of Clinton's behavior. And in the Me Too era, I think Clinton's behavior looks even worse now. The differences of opinion between Americans at the time was whether this warranted this degree of investigation and whether it warranted impeachment, which is what it led to. People who argued against the investigation felt that this was really a private matter and maybe there should be some punishment of some sort for Clinton, or maybe he should admit to what happened and apologize. But many Americans felt that Starr's obsession with the sexual details of what had happened felt that Starr's investigation had gone out of control. Others felt that Clinton had proven himself unfit to be president. So those were what the arguments centered on. I want to make clear, nobody defended Clinton's behavior at the time. Nobody approved of what he did. So when Starr finished his report, which was extremely graphic, most of this you can read online. I think we have a copy in the Webster University Library too. He charged Clinton with having denied an affair with Monica Lewinsky because Clinton had been asked about this during testimony he gave in the previous case, the Paula Jones case. And so Starr's report charged that Clinton had committed perjury. That is, he had lied under oath. And an additional charge was that Clinton thereby had obstructed justice. So these are the charges that the House brought voting to impeach Clinton in December 1998, perjury and obstruction of justice. So Clinton was impeached. And we've seen impeachment just recently with Donald Trump, too. And there's still a lot of confusion among Americans about how this works. So, House of Representatives brings forth charges, those are voted on. And so Clinton is impeached, but impeachment means that charges are brought against you as president. The next phase is that there is a trial in the Senate. Neither of these charges were able to get a simple majority of votes in the Senate, much less the 2/3 that you need to remove a president from office. So, like Donald Trump, Clinton is impeached but not convicted. This is what happened to Trump as well. It's noteworthy that several of the people involved in the impeachment effort, Newt Gingrich was one of the key figures of this, was having an extramarital affair himself at the time, as were a number of other people involved in trying to impeach Clinton. And I don't include that in any way, as I said, to excuse or exonerate Clinton's behavior. They note here Clinton could have spared himself a lot of trouble if he had simply been candid from the beginning instead of relying on a legal definition. Most Americans, the majority of Americans, and polling showed this consistently at the time, believed activities like oral sex constituted sexual relations. But Clinton used this phrase, as I had said before, because he and Monica Lewinsky never had intercourse. So we wrap up on Clinton. There was tremendous frustration about the impeachment effort falling short. Conservatives intensely disliked Clinton. As I mentioned in the first PowerPoint, he was an extremely divisive president. In Clinton's case, some of that had to do with his policies. Some of it had to do with the fact that I think for many conservatives, Clinton represented the 1960s and everything they thought was wrong about the 1960s, along with the fact that he was married to an outspoken feminist, a career woman. Clinton, as Eric Foner notes, appointed the most multicultural administration in American history to that point. His presidential cabinet was extremely diverse in terms of gender and ethnicity. He had been an outspoken proponent for gay rights. All of these were things that conservatives didn't like. And the fact that his approval ratings actually increased, that is, went higher during the impeachment proceedings, was puzzling and maddening to conservatives at the time. And many Republicans came to the conclusion that this reflected deep social problems in the United States. But as I said earlier, polls showed that many Americans felt that Starr's investigation had gone out of control. They found his focus on the explicit detail of the sexual activity between Clinton and Monica Lewinsky to be just as offensive as Clinton's behavior. Many people were disturbed by the Starr investigation, and I think that's really at the center of understanding what happened with the impeachment. So as I noted in the very first PowerPoint, whatever you think about him as a person or as a president, Clinton is an important transitional president, as our first baby boomer president, and an extremely controversial president as well.